You know that saying, never trust anyone? Well, I should have taken it seriously, especially when that anyone was the man I shared my bed with, my life with, and supposedly a grand future. My name is Juliet, and I was a software developer with a mind that, modesty aside, truly sparkled. The truth? I was the brain behind my husband Gabriel's so-called entrepreneurial genius. He, a cold, controlling, narcissistic businessman, was the polished face of a startup that promised to revolutionize the market. But its beating heart, the idea, the code, the soul was entirely mine. Gabriel pretended to admire me. In front of everyone, he called me his digital muse, his brilliant partner. Little did I know that behind that charming smile and empty praise, he was weaving a web, a devious plan to erase me from the picture. He wanted the company all to himself, and nothing, not even our marriage, would get in his way. The setting, Spain, an invitation to a romantic getaway, sounded like every couple's dream. Cobblestone streets, tapas, wine, and the promise of a fresh start for a relationship that, deep down, I already felt was silently crumbling. But for Gabriel, this trip wasn't about love. It was the perfect stage for his betrayal. I remember every detail of that day. The golden afternoon sun kissing the old village walls. His laughter a little too forced, as we walked down a narrow alley. The moment when, for a split second, he pulled me close, and I felt his hand slide into my purse. I didn't think much of it at the time. He was always a bit clumsy, I thought. Big mistake. Hours later, lost and alone, the nightmare became clear. My documents were gone. My credit card gone. My phone gone. Everything. I was stranded in a place where I didn't speak the language. No money. No way to call for help. No way out. Gabriel had vanished. And to complete his twisted masterpiece, he made sure to plant false evidence that I had run off with a lover, turning our divorce into a seamless lie. No assets to split. No questions to be asked. He abandoned me, destroyed me, and painted me as the villain. At that moment, as tears streamed down my face in a strange town square, I had no idea. My story was just beginning. Gabriel had no clue that his act of cruelty would become the spark that ignited a transformation he could never foresee. What he did broke me, yes, but absolutely nothing could prepare him for the woman I was about to become, or for what was coming. I've always been an optimist. I saw the best in people, even when logic screamed otherwise. Maybe that was my biggest flaw, especially with Gabriel. We were the golden couple in San Francisco's tech scene. He, the charming businessman with the silver tongue. Me, the sharp-minded developer, the true architect behind our startup. The idea that promised to revolutionize the AI industry was mine. Born from nights of caffeine and endless lines of code. He presented it as if it were his, of course. But he'd whisper in my ear, "You're my secret weapon, Juliet. Without you, none of this would exist." A sweet lie, wrapped in false admiration. As he, the cold, controlling, and yes, narcissistic entrepreneur, quietly mapped out my erasure. Our romantic getaway to Spain was the peak of his deception. Gabriel chose a picturesque, nearly isolated village in the Andalusian mountains, a place straight out of a postcard, but one that would become my personal hell. I remember him, smiling a little too much, as we strolled through narrow, winding streets. The melody of a flamenco guitar echoed in the distance, and the scent of jasmine hung in the air. I was mesmerized by the beauty, by the false security of his arms around me, while he skillfully stole my documents, my credit card, and my phone. That moment when he accidentally bumped into me, apologizing with a quick kiss on my hair, was when he completely disarmed me. Reality hit just a few hours later. He had vanished. I searched for him everywhere in that maze of streets, panic rising with each step. My heart pounded like a war drum when I reached into my purse and found nothing. No passport, no money, no way to contact the world. I felt like a ghost in a vibrant village, where every unfamiliar face seemed to judge me. And the worst part, I didn't speak a word of Spanish beyond hola and gracias. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Gabriel hadn't just abandoned me, he had made sure I had no way to return. To seal his cowardice, he had already planted the seeds of discord. I later found out that before leaving, He had sent fake text messages to our friends and family, emails with manipulated photos, proof that I had cheated and run off with a lover. His plan was to defame me, erase me from the narrative, and secure a divorce without splitting assets, keeping my startup, all for himself. It was the perfect scheme for a man without a conscience. I sat for hours, maybe an eternity, on a shadowy bench in the village square, watching the fountains and children playing as my world collapsed. My tears were silent, mixed with the dust of the day. I was lost, not just physically, but emotionally shattered. The lump in my throat made it hard to breathe, and the pain was so heavy it felt like a weight crushing my chest. It was an abandonment not just of body but of soul. Then, like a miracle amidst chaos, a serene figure appeared. She had been watching me from a nearby bench, her gentle eyes behind glasses. She was a nun, dressed in a modest habit, with a smile that seemed to warm the soul. She didn't ask questions or invade my space. She simply offered me a tissue, sat beside me, and gently touched my shoulder, sensing my pain without a word. Her name was Sister Sophia. Without me asking, she gestured for me to follow her. Lost and out of options, I accepted her outstretched hand. She led me through paths I would never have found on my own, to a discreet convent hidden in the mountains, nestled between olive trees and the silence of nature. As I crossed the stone gates, I was welcomed not with suspicion, but with warmth and kindness I hadn't felt in a long time. Little did I know that this place, which seemed like a refuge of peace, would become the starting point of my true redemption. The convent in the mountains was a sanctuary of peace, a stark contrast to the chaos Gabriel had planted in my life. I remember those first days as a blur of silent tears and quiet. The sisters, with their warm smiles and gentle gestures, offered me herbal tea and simple meals without asking for explanations. I was just a wounded soul in need of healing, and they gave me that, no questions asked. I watched the nuns weaving, tending the garden, praying, and little by little, the stillness of that place began to soothe the storm inside me. It was on one of those serene mornings that the improbable happened. I was helping in the convent's small vegetable garden, digging my soft office girl nails into the soil, feeling a connection to something real and grounding. I looked up and saw him for the first time. He wasn't a nun, nor one of the few farmers who visited the convent. He was a man, young, with dark hair tousled by the wind and eyes of deep green that seemed to carry centuries of wisdom. He wore a simple cassock but radiated an aura of calm and quiet authority. It was Nathan, the young and incredibly handsome local priest. My heart skipped, not from romantic attraction, but pure surprise. What was someone so complex doing in such a humble place? He approached, and his first smile at me was almost shy, yet warm. Then he spoke, and his flawless English snapped me out of my daze. "Good morning. I'm Nathan. Sister Sophia told me we have a new guest." I could barely respond, overwhelmed by the sound of my own language after days of silence and frustration. I soon learned Nathan wasn't just the village priest. He was the heir to one of the wealthiest families in Spain, with roots that stretched across centuries of power and influence. He had studied at Harvard, spoke multiple languages, and could have had the world at his feet. But just like me, he had gone through a great heartbreak. After being betrayed by a woman he loved, a story painfully close to mine, he left everything behind, the fortune, the family expectations, and devoted himself to simpler causes, to the community, to faith. He didn't run away. He chose a different way to live. Nathan and I spent hours talking. He listened to my story, every word of humiliation and despair, without a trace of judgment. His eyes, so full of understanding, made me feel like he truly grasped the depth of my pain. He knew what it meant to be betrayed, to have your trust shattered. He didn't just speak my language. He spoke the language of my wounded soul. I couldn't sit still. I needed a way to give back the kindness I had received, to occupy my mind. I offered to help with tasks around the village and the convent. I started in the garden, learning from the sisters how to plant and harvest, how to tend the soil that fed us. Then I helped clean the small church. Each sweep of the broom felt like meditation, purifying not just the space, but myself. But it was when I noticed the community's records, still kept in old, disorganized notebooks, that my software developer side screamed. I offered to modernize the community systems, digitizing documents, creating spreadsheets, organizing information. It was something I knew, something that made me feel useful and competent again. Nathan was by my side, helping, learning, and our conversation stretched for hours about technology, faith, village life, and the scars we both carried. Slowly, the barrier between us began to dissolve. What started as gratitude and mutual respect became a deep emotional bond. There was something in Nathan's stillness, in his gentle strength, that drew me in. And in me, he seemed to find a resilience that fascinated him. I was healing, and he was helping me discover a part of myself I never knew existed. The days at the convent turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. My hands, once soft from typing, were now callous from working the garden soil and organizing the community's records. The pain in my chest, the open wound Gabriel had left, began to heal, replaced by a strange and powerful feeling of freedom. I was rebuilding myself, piece by piece, and Nathan was an essential part of that architecture. Our nightly conversations under the starry Andalusian sky became my new refuge, a balm for the soul. We talked about everything, the complexity of faith, the simplicity of village life, and the choices that had brought us to that place. I saw in him a kindred spirit, someone who understood the heartbreak of disillusionment in a way no one else could. But as with all peace, the storm was always lurking nearby. It was late afternoon, the golden sun painting the convent's old walls, and I was in the common room with the sisters, watching an old television that was rarely turned on. They were mesmerized by an international news program, and I, not understanding a word, just observed the images. Suddenly, the screen shifted to a tech event. A massive stage, bright lights, a crowd rising in applause. And there he was, Gabriel. My heart stopped. He was in his natural habitat, basking in the spotlight, radiating confidence and power. He was talking about our startup, about my project, as if the idea and execution were entirely his. The audience gave him a standing ovation. The recognition, the glory, everything he had stolen from me, was being served to him on a silver platter. And beside him, smiling and waving like a true partner, was her, the mistress, now parading under the title of co-founder. It hit like a punch to the stomach, like ice water dumped over wounds I thought were closed. The air flooded my lungs. The convent, the sisters, Nathan, everything disappeared. All I could see was Gabriel, my betrayer, stealing not only my life but my professional soul, my identity. I broke. The tears returned, fiercer than ever, mixed with a new emotion bubbling in my veins, rage. Pure, burning, uncontrollable rage. Nathan had walked into the room just seconds before and immediately noticed the shift in my expression. He didn't need a translation. The image on the screen and my reaction said it all. His strong arms wrapped around me, holding me as I trembled, and his steady presence was the anchor that kept me from collapsing entirely. And there, in that embrace, something inside me broke only to be rebuilt stronger. It was no longer just sadness, it was cold determination. He led me outside, to the convent's quiet courtyard, away from the sisters' curious eyes. Sitting on a stone bench under the darkening sky, I told him everything, words pouring out like an uncontrolled river. Not just the abandonment, but the professional betrayal, the audacity of Gabriel stealing my invention and identity. Nathan listened silently, his hand gripping mine, his expression solemn. When I finished, he looked at me with an intensity one had never seen before. "Juliet," he began, his voice hoarse, I can't deny what I feel for you anymore." His confession caught me off guard. The priest, the man of faith, the heir to a dynasty, was laying his heart bare. I tried to fight it, because of my vows, because of my life here. But you've shown me a different kind of love, one that's not about possession, but about building something real. His green eyes sparkled with a mix of vulnerability and conviction. "I've made my decision. I'm leaving the priesthood for you." His words echoed in the air. That night was a turning point. I, the woman abandoned and betrayed, was being loved and chosen by a man who had once renounced the world. We drew closer, our hearts beating in sync. Nathan introduced me to his family, the powerful Castillos, a billionaire lineage that ruled empires in Spain. They, who had lost hope of ever seeing Nathan truly happy again, welcomed me with open arms. Not as an outsider, but as the woman who had brought light back into their son's eyes. The embrace from the family's matriarch, Donna Isabel, made me feel part of something big and real, something Gabriel could never understand. My life was taking a turn I never could have imagined. And the rage, it hadn't disappeared. It was simply waiting for the right moment to become justice. Life with the Castillos was a whirlwind of elegance and influence, but to me, it was more than that. It was a safe harbor. Nathan had officially left the priesthood, and with each passing day, the certainty of our connection only deepened. Living beside him, even amidst the discreet luxury of his family, taught me a kind of love that didn't require me to sacrifice who I was, but helped me flourish. I was finally whole, strong, and supported by a family who saw me for who I truly was, not as an accessory. While my life was being rebuilt in Spain, Gabriel's, on the other side of the Atlantic, was starting to crumble. I heard through Nathan's family's contacts, an invisible web of information that stretched across the globe, that his startup was sinking. Without my mind, without my code, and without my passion driving the project, the company was nothing more than an empty shell. The project he had stolen, my asterisk idea, was a sleeping giant he couldn't wake. The mistress, the so-called co-founder, was as technically useless as he was. Gabriel's desperation led him to a predictable yet still shocking move. Through his own channels, probably the same private investigator he used to slander me before, he discovered I was alive. And worse for him, I was being embraced by one of the most influential families in Spain. That news must have hit him like lightning. The woman he had abandoned, who he expected to be lost and broken, was now part of a billionaire clan untouchable. He didn't waste time. A few weeks later, an email from an unknown sender landed in the inbox of my new secure email address, courtesy of the Castillo's IT department. The subject line was short and threatening. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. Gabriel was in Spain, in the same city as me, just a few miles away. The meeting happened at a discreet cafe, far from the curious eyes of the press, but under the subtle watch of the Castillo security. Gabriel walked in with his usual confident businessman posture, but his eyes, once cold, now held a flicker of desperation. He gave me a forced smile. "Juliet, my dear, it's been a while." I just stared at him. There was no pain anymore, no love, just a strange indifference. "What do you want, Gabriel?" My voice was firmer than I expected. He tossed a folder onto the table. "Let's be practical. Your company is failing, and it's your fault. You disappeared, ruined our reputation. But I'm a reasonable man. I know you faked your own disappearance to hurt me, to escape your responsibilities." He was blackmailing me, spinning the same web of lies he had used to abandon me. "I have fake evidence that could destroy your new image here. I can tell the world you're a runaway, a scam artist, a liar." My body tensed, but Nathan, sitting at the next table in disguise, gave me a subtle signal. I knew I was protected. "So what's your price?" I asked, my voice steady. His eyes gleamed with greed. "Simple. Either you give me 2 million euros as compensation for the damage to the company and my reputation, and fix the system you built, working from the shadows, of course, or I destroy your name globally. You'll never work in tech again. You'll never be seen as anything but a fraud." And his family, Gabriel gave a pointed look toward the street, fully aware the Castillos were my weakness. They won't be pleased to have a criminal in their ranks. For a moment, the old Juliet, the one who lived to please Gabriel, hesitated. But then, the image of the nun who took me in, Nathan's calloused hands in the garden, the kindness of the Castillo family, flashed through my mind. And the rage I had felt that day at the convent, the rage Nathan helped me process, awoke again, this time with a cold fury in my eyes. He didn't want just money. He wanted control again. He wanted to suffocate me. But the woman sitting across from him was no longer the same one he had left behind. "You'll regret this, Gabriel," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea who you're messing with." He laughed, a dry, arrogant sound. "Oh, I know exactly who you are, Juliet. I know you're brilliant, but I also know you're sentimental. And I hold all the cards." He had no idea the game was only beginning. And this time, I wasn't just a player. I was the strategist, with an ace up my sleeve he would never see coming. Gabriel's threat echoed in my mind, But this time it didn't stir fear. Instead, it ignited a flame I had long allowed to burn out, my own ability to fight. That cold fury I had felt in the cafe turned into an unshakable determination. Gabriel had no idea I had weapons. He didn't know I had found a family that not only loved me but had the power to crush him. I returned to the Castillo estate with Nathan by my side. His green eyes, once filled with a near-clerical calm, now burned with a spark of controlled fury. He took my hands and said, "Juliet, I'm with you. The family is with you. Gabriel has no idea who he's dealing with." That simple sentence was the catalyst. From that moment on, the game changed. With a clear mind, and with Nathan's guidance, we crafted a plan. Nathan was no longer just a former priest. His sharp mind, trained at Harvard and in managing great fortunes, was an invaluable asset. The first move on our chessboard was a meeting with Don Ricardo Castillo, the family patriarch and one of the most renowned and feared attorneys in Spain. His reputation preceded him. He was known for dismantling opponents with surgical precision. In his imposing office overlooking the rooftops of Seville, I laid out every detail of Gabriel's betrayal, from stealing my startup idea to abandoning me cruelly in Spain, and the false evidence he had planted. I handed Don Ricardo the few pieces of evidence I still had from my original work: old emails, drafts of code saved on a forgotten flash drive in the small handbag I managed to keep, and most importantly, the irrefutable testimony of Nathan and the nuns at the convent, who could vouch for my helpless state and my time in the village. Don Ricardo listened intently, his piercing eyes weighing every word. At the end, he smiled, a smile that promised calculated revenge. "Gabriel Davis made a grave mistake, my dear. He underestimated you, and he underestimated the Castillo family. The counterattack was flawlessly orchestrated. Don Ricardo mobilized a team of elite lawyers. Our strategy involved a multi-pronged assault. The first, legal. They filed a devastating lawsuit, not just for divorce, but for intellectual property theft, fraud, and abandonment. The second front was the media. At a high-profile tech event in Madrid, where Gabriel expected to shine again, I appeared, not as the broken Juliet of before, but as a renewed woman, elegant, poised, and quietly powerful. Nathan stood beside me, a pillar of strength and discreet influence. In front of a stunned press corps, I publicly revealed, with undeniable technical and digital proof, that Gabriel had stolen my startup idea, abandoned me in a foreign country, and forged documents to cover up his crimes. The scandal erupted. Press room phones rang nonstop. The news spread like wildfire. Investors in Gabriel's company, shaken by the backlash and fraud accusations, began to flee en masse. The company, already faltering without my expertise, plummeted. He lost contracts, partnerships, and, most painfully, his spotless reputation in the business world. Gabriel made one last move, a desperate attempt to manipulate the media by claiming I was just a vindictive ex-wife. But we had anticipated this. Don Ricardo had warned us. Narcissists always try to control the narrative. That's when Nathan had a brilliant idea. I still had some old recordings of Gabriel speaking to his mistress about the plan to abandon me and take over the company. Casual conversations, recorded unintentionally at the time, when I was present but he thought I wasn't paying attention. Small fragments, but now, stitched together, they formed irrefutable proof. At the height of Gabriel's media hysteria, we released the recordings. Gabriel's voice, clear and unmistakable, confessing the details of his cruel plan to the mistress. The content left no room for doubt. His lies were exposed in the most humiliating way. There was no denying it. His downfall was complete. The few allies he had left abandoned him. His company's stock dropped to zero. He was investigated, sued, and socially condemned in an immediate and devastating wave. Gabriel, the man who once thought himself untouchable, lost everything: the company, the fortune, the reputation, and most importantly, the mask he wore to fool the world. Justice, served cold and with exquisite cruelty, was mine. With Gabriel's ruin exposed to the world, the dust finally settled. The divorce process, once a looming threat, became a mere formality. With irrefutable proof of fraud and abandonment, I officially divorced Gabriel, without having to split any assets. After all, what was his? He had already destroyed himself. There was no party, No public celebration, just a deep sense of relief and the feeling that a dark chapter of my life had finally closed. Revenge, which had consumed me for a brief moment, gave way to something far more meaningful: rebuilding. Nathan and I, with the unconditional support and blessing of his family, the Castillos, began to design our own future. We could have lived in any of the Castillos' luxurious estates, immersed in a world of galas and social conventions. But after everything we'd been through, what we truly craved was simplicity and authenticity. We chose to marry in an intimate ceremony in the small, old village church, with Sister Sophia and the other convent nuns as our guests of honor. It was a day bathed in Spanish sunlight, scented with lavender and filled with the sound of genuine laughter. The ring Nathan gave me wasn't a massive diamond, but a simple and elegant piece of jewelry filled with meaning and a love born not from appearances, but from new beginnings. For our life together, we chose a modest country house, modest by Castillo standards, of course, but a paradise for us. Nestled among green hills, with an orchard that promised fresh fruit and a chicken coop that provided our own eggs, it was our haven. We adopted a rescue dog, a playful mutt who greeted us every day with contagious joy. I returned to my passion for technology, but on my own terms. With the Castillo support, I founded a small remote consultancy focused on software development for social and sustainable projects, merging my talent with my new perspective on life. Nathan, though still involved in community work, found his new purpose at my side, managing our projects and investing in initiatives that truly made a difference in people's lives. Our nights were spent under the stars, on the porch of our country home, talking, dreaming, or simply enjoying the silence and each other's company. That love, which had blossomed through chaos and pain, was living proof that life, even after the deepest betrayals, can surprise us with its most precious gifts. Gabriel, the man who left me in Spain with a cruel plan, never managed to recover. His reputation was ruined, and his greed had led to his complete downfall. I, on the other hand, found true freedom and happiness, not in wealth or power, but in simplicity, in purposeful work, and in a love that was born not from illusion but from rebirth. My husband abandoned me in Spain, yes, but he could never have predicted that by trying to break me, he would give me the chance to rebuild, stronger and more authentic than I had ever been. And for that, paradoxically, I thank him. Because life, after all, has a curious way of coming full circle.